like, comment, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching. All right, y'all, I'm back with some new content. This video features Rambo. Guys, please be sure to drop me a comment, smash the heck out of that like button, and share. All right, y'all, let's get into this video.
Don't want to tune into this live. Hey, what up, y'all? Go by Quetzal. I remind people of who they've always been through timeless practices that are intertwined with nature. Today, we're going to be talking about business. We're going to be talking about conscious business specifically because I think it's really important at this current moment in time for us to really understand the implications that not having the resources in the hands of the people who have the awareness and the consciousness, what those implications are and what that's doing in terms of our role here as conscious beings, our role here as those who hold the awareness and the desire to create a better, aligned, balanced world. And so I'm bringing on a guest, Anthony, and he's going to be talking to us about, or we're going to be having a conversation about the purpose behind aligned business, behind conscious business, and the relevancy specifically in today's world and how possible and how tangible it can be for us today. So yeah, if you want to send that request, Anthony, I could bring you in. Yo, what up, everybody? Hope everybody's having a great week so far. Hey,
Yo, what's going on, man?
hey, what up, brother?
How you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing really, really well. Really stoked to have this conversation with you, man.
Yeah, man. Why don't you start off by introducing yourself?
Yeah, so guys, my name is Anthony Manuel. I'm the host of the Art of Move podcast, a co-host of the Art of Move podcast, which focuses on biomechanics, functional fitness, and the grand unified theory of how we're supposed to move and exist in our body. And I did that mostly as a hobby while I was working in marketing, and I was doing advertising campaigns for tech companies and building funnels for different people who run coaching businesses. And I've worked as a personal trainer. I have a lot of experience doing a lot of different things. I worked as a musician for quite some years, and I've dipped my toes in a lot of different places. But right now, my passion, my mission in life is to help empower people to live their most authentic lives and to create businesses ultimately. I help coaches and consultants and course creators build businesses that generate $10,000 to $20,000 or more per month, and reach as many people as they possibly can to serve the people that they're meant to serve. And that's my ultimate mission in life, is for people to be living their most conscious, authentic lives and helping as many people as possible. So that's I guess a Cold Notes version of what I'm about, trying to cram an entire human existence into like a spark note.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, and I love that, and I think it's important that we're talking about that. And I wanted to discuss specifically like the relevancy of building businesses in the conscious community, in the spiritual community. I've talked about this before, how there's a lot of ideology that's tied to the spiritual community that isn't helping us or isn't leveraging us to kind of create the ideal life that we are wanting. And it's interesting. I don't know if I can share on here. I don't know if it lets me share. I think I can't share unless it's just me on a screen. But there was this video. They're interviewing like hippies from the 60s,
Mm.
and hippies are saying basically a lot of like the exact same shit that a lot of people in the spiritual community say, which is like, people ask me like what I do for a living, and I was like, I just live. And this kind of ideology of like being detached from having anything to do really. And I think I understand where that comes from ideologically,
Mm.
but the application of that is different than what the ideology presents it to be. And then you look at where that movement led, right? In 60s and 70s, there's that movement is non-existent of that movement that was
All right, y'all, go on ahead and drop me a comment, smash the heck out of that like button, and share. Thank you guys in advance.
going on there. And my assessment of that has been because there was no structural foundation that was tangibly set in that time. It dissipated because there was nothing there. It was just ideologically driven. And so unless the ideology has application in the real world and can translate to actually applying into our lives, then it's going to dissipate. So thankfully we have the internet, right? We have technology. So we're in a different space now to where we can leverage these tools in a way that's never before been possible. And I really hope that people understand what I'm saying right now and don't just take it for granted. I'm not just saying like, oh, the internet, AI, like, no, it's like you live in a time right now where the opportunity to create decentralized communities and systems is unbelievably large to tap into. And I hope that you don't just take that for granted, anybody listening, but that you really take that to heart to understand that we're at a different time. So let's talk about how that's the case right now with consciousness and spirituality.
So I want to address a couple of ideas of a conscious community, first of all, and that's a community that obviously idealizes consciousness, awareness, engagement, and presence with their own life. People who have a spiritual inclination, people who read spiritual texts like the Bible and the Tao Te Ching and study Buddhism and esoteric texts like the Kabbalion, they all have a desire to expand their consciousness, their awareness, their presence in their own lives. When you're talking about the opportunities of the internet, being more connected than ever, you and I are on opposite sides of the world right now, and we're talking in real time, and we're discussing, and we're collaborating, and we're trying to bring a message to a ton of people. You have a huge audience of people who listen to your stuff. I have a pretty modest audience of people who like to hear what I talk about, but we have the opportunity to reach people all over the world and share our wisdom. And the internet can teach you anything. Like, I learned everything that I know about fitness, about biomechanics, about marketing, about like every topic that I know about, like nutrition, everything I learned from the internet, from other people, experts in their field on the internet. We have more access to information and therefore access to potential for expansion of consciousness on the internet than we've ever had before, ever, period, which is amazing. Now, in life, there tends to be duality, right? There's an equal and opposite force to everything that we experience in life. So with the amazing opportunities that we have, with the incredible possibility for expansion of consciousness, we also have the possibility for a huge contraction of consciousness with how these technologies tend to be used. If you look at the internet is also like, what, 75% porn in terms of the actual data that exists on it. It's mostly distraction, entertainment. So you look at, what actually contributes to an expansion of
Y'all, I ain't even finna hold y'all, but the guy at the bottom is getting on my nerves. He talked too damn much.
entertainment. So you look at, what actually contributes to an expansion of consciousness. It's the capacity for people to pay attention, to focus, to, in terms of ideology, to look at the ideas that they have and focus on them enough and to act on them enough to the point where they can actualize them and midwife them into material reality. And that requires a tremendous amount of energy, a tremendous amount of motivation, a tremendous amount of focus. But if you look at what happens to our brains when we indulge in a ton of short form content on the internet, we're constantly scrolling reels, we're on TikTok, and we're basically using the internet as a distraction and a way to scan and be entertained and be distracted. That lowers our levels of consciousness. That lowers our capacity for focus. That lowers our capacity for action. That lowers our capacity to actualize anything in the world. And I'm speaking from personal experience. My background, the first product that I ever sold online was a habit course. And that was because I had really bad habits. I had a really addictive personality, if you want to call it that. I was diagnosed with ADHD. I couldn't pay attention to anything. And my biggest obstacle in life was the ability to focus enough on the things that were important to me to actually bring them into being, right? And so a lot of the times, one of the things that I find, and I was involved with the spiritual community as well, by the way, like I actually had a healing center in Halifax, Nova Scotia, built up this whole place called the Center for Holistic Creativity, where we had a studio where we taught meditation. We were trying to draw the community together, and we actually actualized this thing. But because we couldn't focus enough, because we didn't build systems, because we weren't practical enough, because we were idealizing, and we were like, well, we'll just be really positive, and we're going to love everyone, and we're going to have this high vibration, and it's all going to work out. We ended up getting closed down because we had a building building code violation. You know what I mean? So there are these practical realities where it's like, look, we live in systems. We live in the ultimate system, which is the ecosystem of Earth. And then within society, there are multiple systems that are built. There's societal systems, financial systems, like everything in nature is trying to put you and use you in one of its systems. And so I think one of the biggest opportunities that we have today as conscious creators, as human beings who have the capacity for enhanced consciousness, is to build our own systems. It reflects the nature of the creator, which built the ultimate system, which is nature, which is existence. We become like our creator when we build our own systems. And so, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go in on that because like I kind of like the philosophy of like the Renaissance man tapping into these different things. And in the Wild Brotherhood, what we talk about is like the three worlds and being competent in the natural world, the civilized world, and the internet world. And I think that we often overlook that, especially when we come from like these environments where it's like I grew up in the suburbs, right? Or I grew up in like more suburban area. And so you were really disconnected from like the natural world. So then you tap into the spiritual community and the aspects of nature, and you kind of just pendulum swing all the way around, and you kind of just be in nature, and you reject civilization. But then when you kind of settle somewhere in the middle, you realize that you need to have an integrated connection with these different realms of existence, because otherwise you're not gonna thrive, because for one, the resources are bought up and controlled by civilization, right? Like private property is a thing. Food and the acquisition of resources is managed and controlled by these systems. So when you start to analyze the world that we live in, you start to say, oh, well, I need to understand these things. And the more you kind of mature into this role, you start to take ownership and responsibility in your role in being educated enough to navigate the current world that we live in, because we can reference the ancient and be like, oh, yeah, they used to do things this way. But we also have to acknowledge where we're at right now, because that's going to fundamentally impact the experience that we have and that our children have. Because if you don't, right, it's like what you're saying, like a violation, a building code violation, like that ideologically would be like, that's stupid, that's bullshit. But it had a real world impact on your experience, right? So it's like, that's what I'm saying. Like, unless we understand the impact of these things, we'll just be victims to them, right? We'll be like, oh, it's not fair. I don't believe in taxes. But when the IRS comes and taxes your ass because you don't know how to finagle that system, you can't be victimized, because you know that you should be understanding and educating in these different realms, So I really believe in just being holistic in your approach to existence and dominating in all the realms.
Well, I think what you just said in terms of you have to understand how these systems work, that's first and foremost. You have to educate yourself in terms of what's actually happening. Because whether you acknowledge it or not, you are part of a system. If you want to say, oh, dude, the way the society's run is not optimal, like, look at the way the ancients did it. Look at the way they were doing it back then. They were way more integrated with nature and the natural systems. It's like, well, bro, I'm sorry, but that's not reality right now. That's not, you're saying that, and then you're going to Starbucks and getting your coffee, bro. Like
Y'all, did y'all peep that the guy at the bottom's nails are painted black? Like, what's going on here?
No, that's not. You're saying that, and then you're going to Starbucks and getting your coffee, bro. Like you're tweeting about that on your iPhone, which was bought, which was created through the system of capitalism and all the different production chains that were, associated with that. And so you have to understand, like, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's optimal, which, by the way, you're probably not qualified to say what's optimal as a system, because you haven't put the educational effort to even understand the systems in the first place. Most people who have these strong opinions, they don't know shit. And this is, like they aren't educated enough in terms of how these systems fundamentally work in the first place.
Yeah,
and
because they haven't had to build a system. And even if they built a system that was on their accord, and I think this is the beauty of the transformation and the growth that happens when you're doing something like building a business, is that you start to understand the framework, you start to understand the process, and through that you kind of gain respect and understanding for others who have done that as well. So it's like, it's easy for like a broke person to be like, well, Warren Buffett or Elon Musk should do X, Y, and Z, or they should give their money away or do this with their money, because they haven't gone through the process of acquiring those skills and talents and having the discipline and the structure to build up these systems or these businesses, it's easy for them to have an opinion on it. But I think the more I tap into the process of it, the
Mm.
more I'm like, oh, I get it. I understand that they love the game so much that they just are good at it because they love the game. Not it's not the money that they're really in love with. It's just a byproduct of them being so in tune and aligned to themselves in a way.
There's the self-actualization piece that is massive, right? When you're talking about like, oh, these people are saying billionaires should be giving away their money and stuff. There's an energy and a mentality of entitlement that kind of comes with the conscious community,
Right.
which for me is actually very unconscious because it's, people are trying to manifest these things. And by the way, I really do believe the law of attraction is a real thing. Reality creation through energy and intent is a real thing. I have created incredible things in my life through managing my vibration.
Yeah.
I don't discredit that at all. However, if you only focus on that and you discredit the systems and processes and you don't actually become involved in your life and you don't work on actually participating in life, then you're not conscious. And the reason that I love business and the reason I love building businesses with people is because it challenges all of your limitations of consciousness. It forces you to self-actualize. The same thing is with fitness, when you're challenging yourself and you're pushing your physical boundaries, in relationships, when you're intimate with somebody, intimacy is into me, I see. I've heard that being said before. You have these like strong reflections. Anything that you actually want to pursue in life forces you to become a more actualized version of yourself. And so if you're talking about what's the importance of the conscious community embracing building systems, embracing the realities of processes and putting in hard work, like this is the whole thing. Like so many people in the conscious community have resistance to hard work. And a lot of people who are hustlers have resistance to relaxing and letting things happen, right? So there's two sides of it. You have internally generated resistance from people who are always hustling, and they make it a lot harder than it has to
Right.
be. And then you have people who are kind of like a little bit hippy dippy and like very conscious community, and they're really resistant to hard work. You have this polarity. Somewhere smack dab in the middle, you have the focused wherewithal to challenge yourself, to make yourself uncomfortable, to stretch your own boundaries, and to consciously engage in your life to actualize into a version of self that you know that you can become. And so that's, for me, business is like, it's a trap to try and get people to self-actualize. I'm kind of tricking them. I was talking to someone about a biblical teaching where Jesus would give people like lower level teachings, and when they were asking, it's like, well, why aren't you giving us the teachings that you're giving your disciples? He's like, well, you're babies and you need milk before you're ready for food. A lot of the times before a person can embrace the conscious challenge of self-actualization that comes with challenging themselves to build a big business, to become super fit, they need to have that sort of carrot dangled in front of them of like, oh, you'll have ripped abs, or you'll have like a ton of money and you can do whatever you want and you're going to be high status. And it's like the milk that the baby needs before they're ready for solid food, because the actual benefit of doing this is the consciousness, is the actual.
All right, y'all. If you haven't picked up your copy of Greatness is a Habit, authored by Aaron Dixon, otherwise known as True, many of you know him as True. He is an ex-Carbonation member, and he's authored this amazing read. If you are interested in self-development and growth, this book is a good one for you. It's available on Apple Books for $1, guys. I got my copy and I love this book.
Breaking through of your own bullshit is becoming the person who's capable of actually building a business, because it's hard. It's tough, right?
It's who you become. Yeah, it's who you become in the process, not the actual results of who you become and what you build. And so let's talk about the importance of, specifically in the conscious spiritual community, the importance of building businesses, because I think that, it's easy to disparage people who've built successful businesses, in maybe even unconscious manners, what we would consider unconscious or unethical, unmoral, exploitative, whatever. It's easy to criticize them, but let's talk about how we can, the empowering side of conscious community, spiritual community, having and building businesses, and why that's going to help us and actually create the life that we're wanting.
Right. So in your mind, let's play with that. What do you think is the life that we're wanting? As the archetype of the conscious community, what are some traits of a life that is desirable for that?
I think we want to day to day be operating in a way that feels good and in alignment with who we are. We don't have to compromise on ourselves, our morals, our values, and go to a job that we really don't align, but we're just trying to do it because we need the money. I think that it looks like creating products that are thoughtfully crafted to be able to not pollute the environment and be, just sustainable in the long term. I think so that's the thing. Some of the things that come to mind for me is just creating more harmony and alignment. And it's not necessarily about, that we don't have the tools or the resources, but I think it's the alignment, right? Like there's a job for everybody here in exactly what they want to do, but they might not be aligned to it at this current moment in time,
So I see a couple of things in the conscious community. One is that we just recognize that everything's fucked, right? Like we're looking around, it's like, oh my God, they're spraying so many pesticides on our food. Yeah. They're manipulating people with like there's so much going wrong. And we see all the corrupt system. We see all the corruption. We see all the injustice. We see the systemic, oppression that a lot of people go through. We see how messed up it is at the top. And rather than try to go to war against it, because we're very loving, we're compassionate people, we're looking at, we're looking at the injustice and we're being like, that's just not fair. And we're sitting there, oh, that's not fair. And the downside of that is because we're operating from a place of compassion, of love, and we're trying to live present to the moment, and we're trying to maintain our vibration, we're trying to be loving. Someone's saying it's very true. We also see the magic in the world, right? And there is a lot of magic, there's a lot of love, and we wouldn't care about the fact that the world is such a messed up place if we didn't love the world as well, right? So there's a lot of love and there's a lot of compassion. We try to be present to the moment, and we try to be present with each other, and we value things like community. We value things like friendship. We end up expending a lot of energy on our social relationships rather than looking at our social relationships as things that are just networking, or are ways for us to escalate our status or escalate our business desires. Because the reality is, a lot of people who are at the top, who are creating these corrupt systems, they don't look at the world in a compassionate way. They're kind of looking at compassion and empathy and traits that we really value as limiting factors that inhibit the amount of moves that they can make on the board. They're looking at it as a game, and they're actually looking at it like, these guys are idiots. Like, they're limiting themselves. I'm actually the one who's smart here. I'm actually a realist because I can see how the world actually works. Now, the downside is they're selling their soul to some evil force that is perpetuating negative energy. But the challenge is we look at this, and rather than be inspired to go up against it, like almost like spiritual warfare to a degree, where it's like there's a force of good and love and sovereignty, for example. It's like, I'm thinking of okay, Bill Gates is the largest owner of agricultural land in North America right now, and he's also the biggest investor in soy-based alternative meat products. And I'm sitting here as someone who's studied regenerative agriculture and animal husbandry, and how that can regenerate soil, and how we can create these closed loop ecosystems with permaculture systems design. And there's that word again, is systems design, right? I'm looking at this and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I need to make money right now and start buying up farmlands so that I can go subsidize regenerative agriculture as much as I can. And that's where my mind's at. It's like, that's my motivation for making more money, is because it's like I have enough.
Now, I know y'all seen his fingernails are painted black. I'm trying to figure out why. I don't know. Is it a spiritual thing, y'all? Put it in the comments. Let me know.
That's my motivation for making more money, is because it's like I have enough. Right now I make enough money that I could live like a content life where I'm traveling and I have all the things that I thought I wanted. I'm buying my Hugo Boss jackets. I'm eating at the nice restaurants and flying all over the place. That's good. How can we make money without being greedy? Well, here's the thing, is people are someone just commented that, how can we make money without being greedy? Well, the reality is there are greedy people who are making a lot of money, and they're building systems and putting you into their system to be used as a battery to extract more energy and resources and money and shit from you and your energy and your attention. And you're going to be sucked up into their system. And it's because of their greed, and because of your fear of being greedy, your mental block around money means that I'm greedy. do you know how much money there is in the world? First of all, like it's a resource
Yeah.
that like you can circulate indefinitely. But I'm gonna take a step back. What's on your mind? I see your brain going like
Yeah,
a mile a minute.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it is. It is a really good conversation. First, I want to say like nature is a system, and so like if you're kind of rejecting the system, you're not really understanding most likely the complexities of the system that nature is. And so therefore, you might look out into nature and see chaos, right? You might look at like, man, there's a bunch of trees everywhere. And that was kind of like, I think, what drove the move to like the very structured civilization that we didn't really see the structure in nature itself. But I think there's an inherent nature to reality that is structural. That's the masculine component, right? That structure, that tangible foundation for everything else to build off of. And so, if you don't recognize that in nature, you might want to integrate and have this idea like we should all just be in nature, relaxing and not doing anything, and everything should be free. And like that's an idea, right? But when an animal is looking for food, nobody brings it its food. There's no farmers more like it has to go out there and expend energy and use its own body's caloric energy to find food in the environment, in the ecosystem, to compete for it, to harvest it, to consume it, to be aware of all these different factors in order to sustain its life. So that exchange that is taking place is systemic. And so if you could look at nature as a system, then you could see that we can't create any new technology. We can only recreate what's already been created, right? We're talking about um, we're talking about like the sun's energy, right? What kind of energy is that that the sun uses to create the heat? We create that in here on Earth in different ways. We create locomotion. We create locomotion. We create all the technology that nature has. We recreate it, right? So that's what civilization is, a reproduction of the system model of existence. And so when we recognize that, we can say, well, how can we integrate into this system in a way that's still aligned? And so the difference that I see, and when people say making money is greedy, or they have because they're focused on the money, like that's the ironic thing. Like when you ask yourself that question, is because you're more focused on the money. And if you're more focused on the money, you're executing the same thing that you're accusing other people of. You think Bill Gates and them are focused on the money? No, you're focused on the money. That's why it's so hard for you to see accumulation of money as anything but greedy. Because the people who accumulate large amounts of money, they're so in their bag, in the game, doing their purpose, and the money comes as a byproduct. But all you can see is the money because you're not in your bag. When you get in your bag, it's a different game.
Well, let me flip it on its head too. How can you not make money and not be greedy? If you want to talk about the biological imperative, you want to talk about you as a force of nature, human beings have the same biological imperative of energy efficiency of every other creature on the planet. We want to get the most that we can by doing the least amount of work because that's what has ensured our survival as a species for however long we've been on this planet. And so when you're talking about how can I get money and not be greedy, it's like, okay, well, you're actually just asking, how can I not work and still be happy? How can I not work and still get everything that I think that I deserve and that I think everything that humanity should have? And like, I see a vision of a better world, and I see all these other people who are getting these resources and making a worse world. And I'm sitting here just, I don't want to make money. I don't want to put in the work. I don't want to actually transcend my biological imperative of wanting to stay as energy efficient as possible. It's actually one of the most greedy things in the world to not make money and not use it to make the better world that you have a vision for. If you have a loving vision for a better world, you care about humanity, you want to make humanity better, it's extremely greedy to not go and serve other people and not make money, in my opinion. And this is my own perception, right? It was one of these things where it was like, man, I used to do some volunteer work, and I was busting my balls for hours doing volunteer work, and then I just instead started focusing on. I read this great book called it's called Doing Good Better, and it's a statistics-based perspective on how to do humanitarian work or charity. And it looked at like, what statistically is going to provide the biggest impact for the dollar or the charity work that you're doing.
All right, y'all, go on ahead and drop me a comment, smash the heck out of that like button, and share. Thank you guys in advance.
And that like shifted my mindset completely because, here I am like, again, like volunteering in all these different projects and putting in like a lot of actual like physical labor into volunteer work. And then I realized it's like, I have crazy skills that a lot of people can benefit from. And if I monetize that and I use a fraction of the resources, then it's going to be like 100x, 1,000x, a million X more impactful than me spending. Like if I take these hours and I start working on something and I make money, I give away about 15% of my income every month. And that's like a minimum. My goal for next year is to donate my current annual income, right? Like my current annual income is like my donation goal for the coming year. So it's like, how can you, and the thing is, you can make money from a greedy place, right? But if you actually care about the world and you acknowledge that the world operates on a financial system, at least human society operates on a financial system, you can't not make money and not have that be a greedy thing. In a sense, it's like you're trying to preserve your sense of comfort, your sense of limitations, your sense of, your comfortable existence. I just want to sit back and like let the system take care of me. That's kind of greedy, in my opinion. And that's not to say that, people can't live happy, fulfilling, and even impactful lives, living simply and not starting big businesses and do it. But I still think, like, in terms of contribution, go after some money and go make a change.
Yeah, and so what we're saying essentially is that whether we're making money or not in the conscious community, we're looking at the same world, but how we respond is differently, right? So what you're saying is, like, a lot of us in the conscious community have the empathic response of like, oh man, they're making money, therefore money is bad because of how they're doing it. Let me get away from money, right? But what we're saying is like, no, if you see that the world and the way it's operating and how money and resources are being utilized, make it your mission to acquire the resources so that you can make the right choices with it or better choices with it instead of walking away from it, right? So it's a different perspective, and I think even the word work has a negative connotation. Like, I love the word work. Like, I'm at peace with the word work. Like, I like the work because the work that I'm doing, I enjoy. And so I'm okay with using the word work. I don't have to try to like get around it because
Y'all, I would imagine that Solar, aka Courtney, aka Nature Boy Jr., would benefit from a talk with Rambo, because Rambo is in his bag, he's doing his thing, and he realizes working is necessary. Unlike Solar, he ain't working. He ain't working at all.
And so I'm okay with using the word work. I don't have to try to like get around it because I'm like having to work a warehouse job or doing something which I used to do back in the past. It's like I found alignment within myself and I've been able to leverage that to create the life that I want. And now what I'm doing is scaling it up so that I can amplify what I'm already doing and bring other people on board with that so that they can have the kind of experience that they're wanting. So you find your purpose, you live it, and then you find a way to scale that up, which is what these business people are doing, which is what these big billionaires are doing, and it's like you focus on money too much, like in terms of if you are uncomfortable with like money, or it's because you're focused on the money too much. I know that kind of sounds like paradoxical, but that's kind of how I look at it.
It makes a lot of sense, right? Because they're looking at people who are doing maybe bad, negative things in their perception, and they're seeing that they're rich, and they're focusing on the fact that they're rich. So rich, bad. This person bad, rich, bad, because this person's rich and they're bad. And so they kind of create this like sort of associative connection to like negative energy and being rich. And this is, there's so many programs out there about money mindset and deprogramming guilt and shame around money. And, money is the root of all evil. The actual biblical quote is the love of money is the root of all evil, right? Yeah. So what you just said, it's like, it's the focus on the money is the root of all. It's like the love of money is the root of all evil, but money itself is a tool.
Right.
You can be rich and not be evil. that's a reality. But when you are too focused on it, that is what ends up being the negative thing. Because if you love the money more than you love the people, you love the money more than the purpose or the why, then everything else is an ends to the means of generating more money. versus having money being the ends of the means of making the world a better place, right? Or making a better life for yourself, or actualizing yourself, or having more freedom, or creating the freedom to be more authentic.
Yeah, definitely. I like to say that money is just going to scale up what you're already doing. And if you're not already doing it, then maybe you don't want to be doing it at all because you're thinking, oh, I need to wait till I start making this X amount of money so that I can engage in this activity. It's like, no, find a way. There's always a scaled down version to do the big thing that you ultimately want to do, right? So if you want to have a community in person, start building a community online, start connecting with people. Like there's something that you can do right now that's a version of the big thing. So money's just going to help you scale up whatever you've already been doing. So for me, in my instance, the lifestyle that I live and my teachings and in the philosophy that I live by, money is helping to scale that up, bring more people on, create a community, build a sustainable conscious community of creators who would create and educate the public. Things that I'm already doing, but just money's just going to help expand that, So whatever money you give me, that's what's going to go to, just so you know, because there's nothing else that I want to be doing in my life. I'm already in alignment to it. So I want to talk about the role of the masculine, because for me, there's a direct correlation with this provision and the masculine and tapping into that role and seeing it as our duty. Like, it's not even just like, oh, I'm having to convince you to make money. Like, no, it's your duty to provide. and how are you providing, and for whom are you providing for? So we can start with the self, providing for yourself, but then if you have a partner, a wife, you might provide for your wife. You have children, you provide for your children. And if you start to scale that up, it's like, and you look at it from that lens, it's like, oh, you're just a good provisionary. Like, you're just really good at providing. The more you scale and build a business and get into alignment with that. So yeah, I want to talk about that.
Yeah. So in terms of that sense of duty, that's something that I'm really motivated by. And I really think that people need to connect to a higher purpose if they want to succeed. Because like I said, it is hard work doing this stuff. It is incredible hard work. And if you are just motivated by base level things, like you think money is going to buy you nicer things, or it's going to make people like you, or you want the abs so that people approve of you, it's like anything that you want to get that's more superficial, you're going to run out of motivation eventually. But if you have a sense of duty behind you, like for me, I don't identify as a spiritual person as much anymore, because life is just spirituality, right? Like for me, in my, I went through my own spiritual journey. I found the answers that I was looking for, but now it's like, but I am very spiritually motivated insofar as I see there are two forces in the world. There's the force of life and the force of death, the force of God, the force of the devil. There is the force of good and the force of evil. And when I talk about, people who are at the top, these sociopaths, these psychopaths who are doing horrible, horrible things, but are building the systems that are running our society, I'm motivated to increase the consciousness of the world. I feel a sense of duty to help people liberate themselves from the suffering that they're experiencing. There's the Bodhisattva vow that I took, where when I came out on the other side of my own suffering, when I went through addictions, I went through horrible poverty, I went through ridiculous amounts of mental and psychological suffering, and I got through all of that. I went through my own fucking journey. It sucked. It was hard. And I'm like, people can't ever experience this. Like, this should not be the state of humanity. Like, I went through all of this because of my own circumstances and stuff that sent me on my journey, but I feel a sense of duty to help prevent the suffering in the world. And so that's my motivation on those days where I'm like, I'm distracted and I want to fuck off and take a nap and I want to eat some shitty food and I want to watch Netflix instead of working on my business and do all this stuff. I just think it's like, man, there are people out there suffering right now. There are people out there fucking hurting, like worse than I was too, and like not just as much as like worse than I was. And there's a warrior spirit in me that comes from that desire to and I don't know if it's a provision thing. I come from an Italian family as well, where it's actually my grandfather's birthday today. I was named after Antonio Emanuele, who owned a wheat grinding mill in a town called San Marco de Cavotti during the Second World War that was bombed because it was occupied by the Nazis. He had to flee Italy and he went to Venezuela, and my nonna fled to Canada. He wrote her letters for like a year and a half, 2 years before he finally got on a boat, met up with her, and started their family. And he was the provider, right? And my dad told me stories. He worked as a plumber.
Why it seemed like every time the guy at the bottom talk, he go off topic? What does his father being a plumber and all this other extra shit have to do with what they're talking about?
And he was the provider, right? And my dad told me stories. He worked as a plumber, and he worked tirelessly at like morning till night, and he would come home and the kids would take off his boots and they would be like, oh, we love you, Dad, we thank you for providing for the family. There was a respect and a reverence for that provision and that hard work that he provided. And then he died at 44, right? He died at 44. My dad was 14 years old, and I get a little emotional thinking about this, telling this story. But my dad, his father died with that in his mind of like, this is what a man is he works until he fucking dies to provide for his family. And that's what my father has done for us as well. That's the role model that I've had in my life. And it's really, really interesting being in a social climate where the role of a provider, the man taking on the role of a provider, is looked at as a negative thing or an oppressive thing in a sense, hey? Because it's a really beautiful thing. It's a loyal, devotional thing for a man to give, to work himself that intensely to provide for his family, to provide for the people that he loves, to commit himself to pushing past his own, desires to kick back and do what needs to be done. Like for me, it's like there's a sense of duty, and that sense of duty is what motivates you to do what needs to be done. And that's what starting a business really teaches you, is it's not going to get done unless you fucking do it.
Yeah. And I like that you said that, because I think also people don't really want it to be equalized, and I think the reason men don't want it to be equalized is because in that way, to where sameness is because we're like, you don't want this, like you think you want this because you see the result of how it appears, but that sacrificial role, like that duty, is very challenging. And I think it's part of the masculine experience, but I think that it's often not spoken about, or left out of the conversation, right? And it's very unfortunate, because I think that energy is very serving, it's very sacrificial, and there's a sacred aspect to it that you're leaving out. And, it's like the same thing we're talking about with business. You're just seeing the money, you're just seeing the results, you're just seeing the accolades and the position of leadership, but you're not seeing the turmoil, the challenge, the sacrifices that have to be endured in order to attain to that. And so I think that the culture is overlooking that in a desire to want to like equalize, quote unquote, or sameness of the culture. But I think that we as men get something from that. Like it's not just like we're sacrificing ourselves. It's also, there's a inherent muscle that's being flexed almost for the masculine to go through the process. And I think that's why I love the concept of rite of passage, because it's literally like solidifying you as a man to be able to endure the kind of circumstances that life is going to throw at you, so that you can be worthy enough to be bestowed the opportunity or the privilege to have a family, And so when you look at it from that realm, it's like, hey, and I ask you this question, or the crowd this question: do you want to go through that? If you're a woman that thinks you want to play that role, are you wanting to go through that as well?
All right, y'all, go on ahead and drop me a comment, smash the heck out of that like button, and share. Thank you guys in advance.
Are you wanting to actually experience what we're describing here, or do you only want the outcome? Right? So when I think about it from that, it is kind of rather unfortunate that the culture has turned its back on the masculine role in this way. And there's definitely a balance, right? Like we have to bring masculinity into balance in terms of, how we conduct ourselves. And in many ways, the conscious spiritual community, the men in it, aren't playing the masculine role. So I understand why there is a deficiency in the conscious community, because a lot of times the men are coming like
kind of this freeloader, like everything should be free energy, and it's like they're sitting on the back on the couch expecting that the world is going to bring them everything that they need when they need to be going out and forging it for themselves.
I am seeing a bit of a shift in a bit like people like yourself in terms of acknowledging it's like shit. I think that these guys in this conscious community are just not actually fulfilling the role that we're supposed to.
Right.
and there's a call. Like I want to shout out to Matthew Finland and Brian Carew of the Human Potential Academy too. I just became friends with them. I met them in Vancouver, and that's their mission as well. They have like an integrated masculinity thing, and they're just like, guys, like we got to step up.
Right.
Like we're not doing the thing. Like we got to do the thing. And I think what I noticed in terms of my own journey navigating society and culture is that we're kind of conditioned to seek out happiness, and then and so for me it's about higher purpose, whether that higher purpose is a duty to your family, a duty to society, a duty to God, something bigger than yourself. We're very self-centered in modern society, and in a sense, like if you watch my content, like I will play and pander to the self-centered, egocentric conditioning that people have, because that's what people need to be able to like wake up and see. Like people are too in this dense consciousness of self-centered, self-serving, happiness seeking and pleasure seeking and distraction and numbness and autopilot seeking that we've been conditioned to. And when we anchor ourselves to a higher purpose, when we anchor ourselves to a sense of duty, that gives you unlimited motivation. Not unlimited because we're human and we go through shit, but like it's going to get you the motivation to dig yourself out of the hole when you're in the hole. It's going to give yourself the motivation to be like, to confront your own shit and be like, I'm actually acting like an idiot. I should probably look into this and start to integrate some of my own bullshit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And also it's like there's so much accountability. Like maybe a couple years ago, like I got really into the concept of like extreme ownership, or just like taking accountability for your life. And that really shifted things for me, because I think that a lot of times like the way we integrate spirituality for the masculine and the feminine is different. I think that a lot of times for the masculine, like Stoicism is like a form of spirituality for the masculine, so, and also with like extreme, like we need certain concepts. We need like combat training, like that's a spiritual practice for the masculine. So that's what you were saying, like, yeah, that's the way I see life too. Everything is spirit, everything is spirituality. So there's no need to say like I'm spiritual. Like, of course, everything is spiritual. But when we start to look at these components, and I think what we talk about when we say spiritual is more about how we relate to them. So we can both engage in combat, but I might be looking at it as a form of transcendental experience that's teaching me something about myself. You might not. You might just be like, I like to kick ass, and you don't see, where you might need some room to grow, or you might be over aggressive or reactive, right? Which are feminine traits, by the way. And so when I talk about like the masculine component, it's like also understanding that your actions in relating to life in a spiritual way, where all the accountability comes back to you. So even if your partner or your wife is not moving in the way that you would like, how can you bring that back to yourself and make it be your responsibility? Like, you take accountability. Maybe it's your actions in the way.
All right, y'all. If you haven't picked up your copy of Greatness is a Habit, authored by Aaron Dixon, otherwise known as True, many of you know him as True. He is an ex-Carbonation member, and he's authored this amazing read. If you are interested in self-development and growth, this book is a good one for you. It's available on Apple Books for $1, guys. I got my copy and I love this book.
You're showing up in the relationship, the way you're showing up in your business. So instead of blaming your employees, bringing it back to you. How are you communicating to them? How are you showing up in your business? So it's like that concept has been vitally helpful for me in my life, in formulating a strategy to respond to life, as opposed to blaming. It has shifted the accountability to myself, and now I respond to things in a different way.
that's kind of like one of the core principles that I live my life by is radical accountability. Is like responsibility is freedom ultimately, right? Like you can't, if you're blaming something else or you're blaming a circumstance, well, it's like, okay, so you're not going to be able to change. You're disempowering yourself. You're
Right.
basically
The
literally,
victim.
yeah, it's a victim mentality, and you're exporting your power to some other external circumstance outside of yourself. Now, that being said, there is a bit of a paradox where radical self-responsibility can be a limitation too.
Mhm.
Because all of a sudden, if you're personally responsible for everything, and this is something that I'm working on, this is an area of integration that I'm trying to do, where I have felt so personally responsible, and I've been so reluctant to put my results outside of myself, that collaboration with others tends to be diminished, and I don't rely on other people. I don't trust other people enough to grow beyond. And ultimately, it's like the people who build really, really big things, they don't do it by themselves.
Y'all, please pardon my notification. I was actually out and about when I was recording, and I ordered my Uber, and it was just letting me know that my driver was there.
Ultimately, it's like the people who build really, really big things, they don't do it by themselves. They do it in teams. They build these incredible teams, and they learn how to inspire and lead others. And if there's an ultimate sense of personal accountability, personal responsibility, then that's great. That means that you're managing yourself really well. But if you take that to the extreme and you start to isolate yourself, and you're only responsible for, you are the only one responsible, and you are the only one responsible for the outcomes, then that synergy and that collaboration and that growth and that connection that you can grow with others can also diminish, right? And so there has to be everything's balanced, right? There's always,
Right.
you always have to come back. There's a reason that the Buddha promoted the middle way. But there is something to be said for, yes, be incredibly deliberate, incredibly responsible, incredibly intentional, but then also be able to look at someone and be like, all right, you have this. I'm gonna trust you.
Right.
And that, I think there's something masculine about that as well, where it's like, if I led you strong and I've inspired you and we've communicated and we've developed a mutual respect for one another, I should be able to trust you to have my back, to be able to carry something out that I'm not doing in the moment. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the reason that the concepts of like extreme ownership, radical accountability are so powerful is because most people aren't operating from that. Like, I think the large majority of us, like the easy thing to do is to blame the external, right? The easy thing to do is to blame your partner. That's why you hear these people that are in relation or that they're out of relationships. They're like, yeah, man, like everybody I meet is toxic. It's like, really everybody? Every world, like every relationship, right? Then, but they don't see the pattern like that. They're like the consistent theme in that, right? So it's like I see that it's common for people in general, the human, to be pointing the blame outward. So I think when you introduce that concept and you start to bring it in, where it could be really helpful, but like you said, it gets to a point, or it can be utilized in a way where you're not able to collaborate because you think that you should be taking on the responsibility. But I think of one of the tenets of like extreme ownership is to be able to delegate. So you're not responsible for everything, but you're responsible for making other people responsible and,
Yes.
and showing them how to navigate that responsibility. So I think in that way it can translate well. But yeah, I don't want to like go on forever because I want people to watch the replay of this. So
For sure.
let's tell them about what we got going on tomorrow and
Yeah.
Wild Brotherhood, y'all. So Anthony's going to be giving a presentation, a seminar with the Wild Brotherhood community, where we're going to be discussing the digital marketing strategies that he has. And so I'll let him tell you a little bit more about what you can expect.
Yeah, so first of all, man, I'm really excited to go talk to your community and offer this. It's literally the system that I use with my clients to help them generate $10,000 to $20,000 a month with their coaching businesses. And so I do a 4-step process where we figure out how to create an offer that resonates with the ideal client that you're trying to work with. We create a step-by-step signature system that creates reliable results and also pre-handles objections and breaks the limiting beliefs of the people who would be looking to do your program. A lot of the times, the things that hold people back from actually taking action and purchasing a program is they have some sort of subconscious belief that yeah, okay, I can see that if I go step by step and I do this thing, I'll actually get the result, but I don't actually believe that I'll be able to do the steps. And so
All right, y'all, go on ahead and drop me a comment, smash the heck out of that like button, and share. Thank you guys in advance.
I help people create systems that not only will guarantee that a person will get the results if they do the steps, but also help people believe that they can actually do the steps. So that's the first thing we teach, is how to create an offer that is based around a system that a person really believes in, really is excited by, and really generates trust and rapport with you right away before even having a sales conversation whatsoever. Then I'm going to teach your community about how to generate a lead machine, basically, how to create both with paid content and organic content, how to generate ads, how to have DM systems, how to use lead magnets, all the fundamentals of marketing in terms of the systems that will help you take a total stranger who has never heard of you, resonate with your message, have a conversation with you, and convert into a paying customer. Now, there is a step in between there, and that's the third step, is it's how to have a sales conversation. So I'm going to teach your community about the psychology of persuasion from an ethical perspective. We're going to be coming from a service-based and an empathy-based perspective, as opposed to a sales manipulation in terms of, like, you know, hitting those emotional triggers. If we did our legwork with creating the good offer, with having the good lead generation, writing good ads, really resonating with the needs and desires of our customers, we don't need to have pushy sales tactics. We can just invite them, and then we can coach them through any objections or limiting beliefs that they have to lead them to the best possible solution for them to have a sale with you and to buy your product. And finally, once we have that, you have basically now you have your core offer, you have your high ticket offer, you have your lead generation, you have your sales script. Now we're talking about long-term branding and how you can use social media content, YouTube, podcasts, those types of things, and how to expand from that core offer and how to create a cohesive narrative that's going to resonate with larger audiences, how you can leverage other people's audiences like you and I are doing right now, and how you can create a strong personal brand that will eventually help you scale. And that's the fundamental, that's the foundation. That's usually what I do with people. We do 1, 2, 3, 4, and that gets them to $10,000 to $20,000 a month or more within 4 months or less. And I'm going to be teaching the community exactly that.
That sounds epic, man. I can't wait to listen to and see that presentation. And so for everybody listening, that's for the Wild Brotherhood community exclusively. And so it's really vital, like everything we talked about right now about building conscious businesses and shifting the kind of the direction of business in general into more conscious, aligned manner. I need y'all to get into this, because we're the ones that are creating the structure for the new earth, as people like to say, but we actually have to do that shit. Like, so I need you guys to tune into this so that you can learn and understand how to build a business, get the resources, and then utilize those resources so that we can create the kind of world that we're wanting to live and to experience. And so you can be in your purpose, and you can be provided for, your families can be provided for. Step into your masculine role, and let's conquer and dominate in all realms of existence. So, man, really appreciate having you on. So if you want to listen to the seminar tomorrow, it's going to be for Wild Brotherhood members only. So go and sign up for Wild Brotherhood membership. It's cancel anytime. There's a lot of value in there. We do weekly calls. We have the Discord. We have priority access to the in-person events. We're really doing good in building a network and scaling that up to a very valuable proposition that I know you're going to get a lot of value from. So, yeah, man, I appreciate you for having you on, Anthony. This was a great conversation.
This is a great conversation, man. This is the first time we've done this. And I just want to quickly say, for everyone who's watching this, either live or you watch the replay all the way to the end, you're doing the right thing by engaging in long-form discussions, long-form content. You're not just watching the little reels, the little TikToks. You're taking time to allow your brain to focus on one thing. And that is the first skill that you have to develop, is your capacity to focus, your capacity to follow longer threads of information and longer, deeper concepts, nuance. This is something, so thank you for anyone who watched the whole thing all the way to the end. I'm really, really looking forward to speaking to your community tomorrow. I love this conversation. I'd love to have another one anytime, man. I feel like we really vibe and have a lot to bounce off of each other. So yeah, just thank you again for the opportunity, man.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, we'll do it again for sure. All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed this video as well as my commentary. Please be sure to drop me a comment, smash the heck out of that like button, and share. Guys, I want to give a warm welcome to all of my new subscribers. Hey, y'all. Welcome to the channel. To all of my OGs, my day ones, my ride or dies. Y'all already know what it is. Big up yourself. We in the building with it.